From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
You'll be mine. Take you home and love you and kiss you all the time. Kiss you all the time. Kiss you all the time. Better leave my diner alone. Better leave my diner alone. It's raining, it's pouring, the rain is falling down. If I can't have my diner, have no gal in town, have no gal in town, have no gal in town. Snowing, it's snowing, the world is turning white. Sun lights up the daytime, save Dinah for the night. Save Dinah for the night. Save Dinah for the night. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about this little one. And, of course, it's got a story. As you can see, it's kind of interesting, made little banjo with curtain sash as a strap, because that's all that Doug had in his shop the day I went in to look at it. And what he said to me was, I was at Heinemann Family Folk School in Kentucky. And this guy comes up and he says, Sheila, my name is Doug Naselrud, and I've got a shop over in town. I'd love for you to come by and see this banjo I made and see what you think of it, because Riley Bogus is in here last week, and he said it was a chick instrument. Any of you know Riley Bogus? Then doesn't that sound just like something Riley would say? Absolutely. And, well, it is kind of an interesting sound to it. It sounds kind of like a hammered, or not a hammered dulcimer, but a lap dulcimer and a banjo, kind of. And it's not as loud as the other one. But I learned this song actually from Frank Prophet Jr. And Frank died, gosh, I guess it's been, what, 15, 17 years ago now. And he was a very, very humble kind of performer. His father was Frank Prophet Sr., of course, and he was a big voice singer. And Frank was a little bashful. He'd tell you that himself, but until he got mad. And then it was just like, he was like any other mountain man I've ever known. He just lost his mind. And so without knowing any better, I went up to him and said, Frank, would you do me a favor? And he said, what? And I said, oh, in your next set, would you play Tom Dooley? Now, that was a big thing in his family, because some collectors came down, collected it. It wound up in the hands of somebody else that gave it to the Kingston Trio, who then went on to record it. And Well, just so you know, Frank Sr. got $700 out of that deal. Yep. So, anyway. But this is the way that Frank Jr. played it and taught it to me. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley. Hang down your head and cry. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley. Poor boy, you're bound to die. Say I took her on that mountain. There I pulled my knife. And up on Ripshin Mountain, they say I took her life. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley. You can help me sing. Hang down your head and cry. Murdered little Laurie Foster. Poor boy, you're bound to die. Now the story was that Tom Dooley sung this while he was in the jail cell waiting for them to hang him, because he was found guilty of killing Laurie Foster after 3 hung juries. Well, it seems Tom fought for the Confederacy. And there was, of course, a Union judge sitting on the bench. And he said, I've heard enough of this crazy stuff. You are guilty of this crime and you will hang. And that's when Tom Dooley wrote this song. Hand me down my banjo, place it on my knee, because this time tomorrow it'll be no use to me. And there was a fiddle involved too. He was a great fiddle player. Hand me down that fiddle, make sure that it's in tune. Today's the 5th of May, boys. Don't reckon I'll live till June. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley. Hang down your head and cry. Murdered little Laurie Foster. Poor boy, you're bound to die. Now the rest of that story is they put him on a mule and he rode down to the hanging tree, which was a white oak tree. And he asked if anybody would like to have his fiddle. And nobody would take it, and so he, by that time, had the noose around his neck, and he picked the fiddle up and broke it over the rump of the horse or the mule, and it ran out from under him, and Tom Dooley was hung. 15 years later, Ann Melton said, "There ain't no man gonna stab a woman 27 times. I was the one that killed Laurie Foster." If you want to know why, ask me outside and I'll tell you. And here's your last verse. By this time tomorrow, where do you reckon I'll be? I'll be down in that holler, hanging from that white oak tree. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley. Hang down your head and cry. Murdered little Laurie Foster. Poor boy, now you're bound to die. Poor boy, you're bound to die. Now that we've got the banjo out of the way, I can relax and sing you love songs and all. I'll try not to do Lord Bateman. Lord Bateman's the one that Granny taught me. This man went on more crusades than you've ever seen in your life. He is all over the place. He wound up in Turkey, but there was a verse in that, just like in all the rest of the songs, that would catch my attention, make me want to learn the whole thing, which was sometimes, 30, 40 verses long. And on this one, Granny said, honey, don't worry about it. They'll get the story from about 40 or 41 verses, so you don't have to sing all 96 of them, which is what there were. But, so I won't do Lord Bateman, but I will do this one. It's sort of got a great little story to it. It's called Matthew Groves, now it's called Lord Musgrave too. And I'm kind of torn between, I'll let y'all decide. I'm torn between doing the one that's called The Four Marys, or Mary Hamilton, which is about infanticide, but it's got a little twist to it. Not many women remembered this song. Oh, I know, everybody's saying, oh, well, times is different back then than they are now. And so women who were not married, they were property too, so there you go. They just did the best they could. And I think the Mary in this one did. Or we'll do Little Matthew Groves, up to you. Which one? Little Matthew Groves, a show of hands. Four Marys, all right. Got it. It is a great song, yeah. How are you? It's good to see you. I'm glad you're here. Seeing old friends and familiar faces. And time has made a change in all of us. All right, Four Marys. One has taken the kitchen girl, and one has taken the hall. But Mary Hamilton's gone within for the greatest steward of all. Now he's courted her in the kitchen, he's courted her in the great hall, he's courted her in her lady's chamber, and that was the worst of all. Now word has gone through the courtyard, and word's gone through the great hall, that Mary Hamilton is with child by the greatest steward of all. On the night that poor Mary labored, small cries she gave only 3. But before the sun had come up the next morn, she'd delivered her little baby. Well, she's wrapped it up in her apron so tight and throwed it into the sea, saying, sink ye or swim ye, my little baby, but your mammy you'll never more see. And it's down then come that old queen with a gold crown on her head, saying, Mary, swear that little baby I heard cry last night in your bed. It weren't no babe, Mary, she said, the cries you heard came from me. I'd such a pain in my right side, causing me much misery. Then the queen, she pulled back the blankets, and then the snow-white sheet. And when she saw the blood and the gore, 'twas then she began to weep. Said Mary, put on your gown of black, or yet your gown of brown, for you'll be going with me tonight to visit fair Edinburgh town. Oh, I'll not wear no gown of black, or yet my gown of brown, but I shall wear my gown of pure white to go riding through Edinburgh town. Now it's some they chose to ride on the black, and some they chose of the brown. But Mary's steed was one of pure white. She went glittering through Edinburgh town. And as she rode up that cannon gate, she laughed and twittered so free. But as she came back down that cannon gate, the tears ran off on her cheek. And as she walked up them Parliament steps, the heel broke off on her shoe. And as she came back down them Parliament steps, the crowd said, "It's the gallows for you." Now word has spread all through the town what Mary's fate was to be. And every woman hung out their window and cried, "Alas, poor thee." I like her spunk right here, though. "I save your tears, weep not for me. Just let my folly not be thine. I stand before you a maid today, but these gallows steps I'll still climb." And it's little did my mother think that day she first held me, the lands that I would travel o'er, and the people that I would see. And it's little did my father think that day he first cradled me, the hangman's noose would wait for me. Now, oh, how his poor heart would bleed. Last night I washed the Queen's feet and braided gold in her hair, and the only reward that I'll receive is to climb up them gallows stairs. Yesterday the Queen had 4 Marys, tomorrow she'll have only 3. She'll have Mary Seton, Mary Beaton, and Mary Carmichael, but not me. And you know, when you hear a song like that, you kind of wonder what in the world was going on there. Well, it went on a lot. And usually it was a lot more gory, actually, than that. In the Knoxville Girl, which is really the Oxford tragedy. See, all of these love songs came across the big pond with the settlers that came into this part of the world. They were mostly border country Scots. I had my DNA done. Now, and I was absolutely positive that there would be some sort of exotic blood in there, maybe little melungeon, you know, or something. And nope, not a drap. Matter of fact, I'm 45% still British, borderline there on Scotland and England. So that big, you know, red wave came through there first, and then it swooped down and went up through France, through Normandy, kind of curved around caught the top of Germany, and then it just made a beeline straight up to what they call the Viking country. So I'm almost more Viking than I am anything else. And I told them when I was on tour in England last year at their 2 festivals, one in Sidmouth and one in Whitby, somebody said, how did you wind up with all the Viking blood? And I said, well, I guess it's all them little round English gals that couldn't run fast enough. Or maybe not. Maybe my ancestor was the king of the Vikings or something, but I doubt it. It's probably just what I said first. Which they did not appreciate, I will tell you that right now. Now, I was in Australia a year ago, actually, for almost 4 weeks, and there was this guy in the audience. I took my young fiddle player, Branson Raines, with me. He can't be here today because he got a full scholarship to Davis and Elkins College at the age of 23. Because I begged, pleaded, and threatened them to take him, and because he's smart, great fiddle player, and he stepped right into the role of their #1 fiddle player for their ensemble band, the Appalachian Bluegrass Ensemble Band. So that's where Mr. Branson Raines is today. But anyway, Branson did go to Australia with me, and we were on stage performing. Somebody out of the audience said, "Hey, mate, you've got a neat accent." And I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. I looked over at Branson, and he grinned, and I looked back out, and I said, "Nah, hell, honey, you're the one with the accent. It ain't me. You're the one that's got the accent." So I loved being in Australia, though. It was a beautiful place. Beautiful people, too. And then, like I said, I was I was in France in December. So last year's sort of a blur. This year ain't going to be that way because I made it so. I figured at 64 I needed a break this year, so I took it. Anyhow, coming up next is going to be a story. I was here at a storytelling. Was it the first book day, I think, that was...
2001, the very first national book.
Yeah, and I have written 2 books. I've written Come Go Home With Me short stories, and I wrote a little novel based on a story that Daddy told me. It's called My Old True Love, about the women's side, their story about the Civil War in the Appalachians and what and all happened to them. But anyhow, I don't know where I was going with that. But anyway, the story I was going to tell you was, the books. Yeah, I was here for that in '01. Now, the last time I had been here, except for '01, was in 1976. And that was when Granny and Burzil and Inez and Kaz and all of them came up here with intentions of singing ballads, which they did. And Inez was with them, and I just want to share a real quick little story about Inez getting prepared to come to the Bicentennial Celebration in 1976. Well, they had sent out, Granny said, a bunch of people from that big old Smithsonian place up yonder in Washington. They said Washington, D.C. It's kind of like they washed their clothes, too. And she said, now, and I reckon we're all going to go since they've sent them people out and they found Sodom. And how they found Sodom, I don't know, but they come in here and this boy wants us to come. Well, the boy's name was Alan Tullis, and he's a fabulous human being, and he got it arranged for all of us to come up. So there was about, I guess, 40 or 50 years between me and the next youngest one, and so people kept getting me confused with volunteers for the festival, and they would ask me where the first aid tent was and how they could get water, and I'd say, gosh, I don't know. And they'd say, oh, my God, you're one of them. And then they would point at all these older ladies. Yep, I was. And we put on a fine show for them on the big stage right in the middle of the festival. And I'm going to shorten it down a bit. We were sitting in the green room, which was a tent with a fan, a box fan, plugged up somewhere that was blowing all this air that was about 100 degrees, and it was so full of water that you would have to, blow your nose before you said anything because you were almost drowning in it. And by the way, my daughter said, "Mom, if you wear a dress, be sure of 2 things." And I said, "What?" And she said, "That your slip is not showing when you walk out there." And I said, "And the other thing," she said, "Well, it doesn't have anything to do with your slip. Make sure you wipe your nose so that it won't, you won't have problems with that when you go out there." So that's from my daughter, her advice. And so we were waiting to go out on stage in the green room. And so they were sitting back there talking, all them women were, and they had their pocketbooks sitting in their lap, kind of on their knees, and they were white-knuckling them pocketbooks, And they were substantial pocketbooks. They were not like these little bags we throw up on our arm now and go pressing along with, I mean, they were kind of shaped like a hammered dulcimer, they came down, and they were these big, about the size of this speaker over here, and they had a clasp right in the middle, like a ball or a little thing that you could pop up, and then that pocketbook had 2 little carrying strings, handles on each side of the pocketbook. And that pocketbook would yawn open. And before we left the house, heading for the festival, Granny reached all the way as far as she could up on her dresser with that pocketbook positioned at the end of the dresser. And she just raked everything on that dresser off into that pocketbook, snapped her up, went to the other side where there was still a few things because she could reach about 3/4 of the way, and she opened that pocket, reached the rest of the, about 1/4 of the way, and shoved so that the entire contents of that dresser top went in that pocketbook. It was serious stuff in that pocketbook. But I'll bet y'all, well, if you've got a little snow on your roof like I do, that's turning blonde on the ends. It's hard for me to believe that it's... So I always wanted to be a blonde, So anyway, so there they sat with their pocketbooks clutched down, and I had been schooling Inez Chandler. She was a double-barrel Chandler because she was a Chandler who married a Chandler. Now, I would get into my family tree, but it would take about as long as Lord Bateman, so I'm not going to do that. I'll move right along. But they were related, all these people, by family, by marriage, blood, and usually both. So there you have it. My family goes around and around and around. We don't have a tree, we have a wreath that just, and it kind of wraps, back around, comes back around, but it keeps going around like this, and there's no sprigging out, it just around and around. So I have a grandson. My daughter went off to Coleraine over in Northern Ireland and went to the University of Ulster for a year, and danged if she didn't come back. And my cousin Barbara's son had been in the Navy for 4 years, and he got back about the same time. And wouldn't you know, family history dictated that the 2 of them get together. So there we are now. I've got a grandson that is also my double 8th cousin, my 9th cousin, double 10th, my 11th cousin, and double 12th. So there you go. So we're all one big happy family there in Madison County. All love each other very much. And all I can say is thank God for Daddy and them. They didn't come in until later on, right after the Civil War, and threw a few jeans, new ones, in that pond. And we all came out fairly okay. So anyway, Inez Chandler squared, she'd say. And Inez really whatever went through her mouth would come out. I mean, her mind would come out of her mouth, or the other way around, I guess. And I think she just sat around and thought of stuff, thought about things she could goad people and bait people with. She's a real nice person. And she used to go swathed in about 10 yards of double knit polyester material. And she would say, hang on to the back of my dress, honey, we're in a hurry. Just twist your fists up in there, right there above the belt. Hold on, we're going out of here. And she'd flip that pocketbook over with that big gold ball right there in the middle of it. And we'd go out of wherever we were, including a snake handling service one time where that she cleared the path down the aisle and out onto the porch, and we were the first ones out there. I've never heard such thunking of heads as she went out that door with that big pocketbook. So anyhow, there we were in the green room, and bluegrass band on stage, and as is usual for bluegrass bands, no disrespect intended, but you know what the true definition of a country gentleman is, right? A bluegrass banjo player who don't. All right. That's all I'm going to say about my beloved fellow bluegrass banjo players in this room. Love y'all. So Inez, we were getting ready to go out on stage, bluegrass band playing, and Inez was talking to Granny. Now, there was not much talking to Inez, there was talking to Granny, because Inez talked nonstop, just like Virgie. Wallin talked nonstop. Virgie was Kaz's wife. If you'll come back and see me again one of these days, I'll give you a demonstration of how Virgie used to talk. That'll just crack you up, because I know you got people in your family that same way. And I was going to talk about these big pocketbooks. When you were in church as a child, do you remember getting a little squirmy, maybe a little restless, and you'd start twitching about, kind of moving and, doing, or maybe it was just me. I'm one of the 2% of grown women who carried the H in ADHD into adulthood with them. It's kind of like having St. Vitus dance or something. But anyway, so Inez yammering and everybody talking, and Barzil looks up at me, little tiny Barzil, little granny, never mean to anybody, just sweetest person in the world. And she looked up at me and said, do you reckon, Seeley, that I would have time to have me a little dip of snuff before we went out on that big stage? And before I could say anything, Granny, her younger sister, wheels around and says, don't you put that in your mouth, Barzil. As sure as you do here, they'll come a-motioning us out there on that big stage. Now, don't do it. Well, there's a definite pecking order in the sisters down there in the mountains. You don't tell the oldest sister nothing, because she mostly raised you, the way that they had children. My grandmother had 13 children between the ages of 21 and 51. 13 children. All of them boys, except for a set of twin girls born right in the middle. So that gives you an idea. And so they were all sitting around getting ready, to go out there on stage. I keep getting sidetracked because I want you to know all this stuff about these people, and I can't fit it into this, so I'll just concentrate on this story. So sure enough, Barzil did exactly what I would have thought the oldest sister and the oldest person with us would have done. She yawned, up went the little pop on that pocketbook. It yawned open to Silver Springs, Maryland. And she dove down in that pocketbook, and all you could see was the bottoms of her little shoes kicking around. And she jumped back out with her box of Bruton sweet snuff in a little tin. Do y'all remember that? Anybody in here ever had older women relatives that dip snuff? Well, good, we're probably all related, all four of us. So anyway, tapped the top of it, opened it up, got her ice cream spoon, pulled that lip out to Evansville back down on this side, and she dumped all of that snuff down in her lip. And about the time it's set up like concrete, as it is prone to do when it touches saliva, here they come motioning us out on that big stage. We swept up out there. We went and they had 9 microphones, and I don't know why, because we all sung solo. You don't sing the ballads together. You just never did. But they had 9 of them, all of them wired, hot as they could be. And as we were going across stage, Granny stops dead center of the stage and says, "Burzil, you've got your mouth plumb full of that nasty old snuff. Now what are you going to do?" And turned and walked on across the stage. And Burzil froze. Now, she had her pocketbook in lockdown position, which is where, after getting up, where they'd been white-knuckling it, they had worked it up on their arms, got it up here with that ball buried, in the armpit there, slammed that arm down, grabbed her left wrist, and locked that sucker down good and solid till nobody'd get that $1.38 they had taken care to bring with. And so they all had lockdown going on there. And Burzil, just like a light bulb went off, down come that pocketbook off of her arm, up went that clasp, it yawned open again, and she commenced this brown stream in front of about 17,000 people strewn out down the mall. And I watched in horror. That was my first real nervous breakdown. I remember it like as yet. Right there on that stage, I watched as the laughter rolled all the way to the Washington Monument and then rolled all the way back. And she did that for about 3 minutes. And everybody's just dying laughing. Prior to that, I had told Inez, you cannot tell a single dirty joke or sing a single dirty song. Not one, Inez. Inez knew over 100 of the dirtiest songs you have ever heard in your life. So bad, I'm afraid they're going to disappear. I'm going to have to find me some young person that really don't give a poo and will just come and sit on my porch and learn them all. And she said, "Oh, why wouldn't I do that now? I can sing them." And I said, "Because we'll be in our nation's capital." And she said, "Really? Do you think for 1 minute, honey, that anything that could come out of the head of an old gray-headed mountain woman would insult or offend any single one of them damned old blood-spitting, poison vipers that are up there in that den of iniquity called Washington, D.C.? Keeping in mind, that was when Elizabeth Ray broke, up here during them years. Okay. So Inez just saw a big audience laugh, and she went to that front microphone, and she looked out and she said, "Well, yuns looks like a good bunch. I don't believe yuns would be offended if I told yuns a little joke." Second nervous breakdown I remember with clarity right there, and I was holding my breath, and she said, "Well, now over there around home there's this old dog." And me and Granny both kind of went, "Oh." But she localized it like she always did. She said, "Yeah, Rube and Zachary's sitting on the porch there minding their own business, and this old dog, oh, Lord, it was the stinkingest, nastiest old thing you've ever seen. Must have had the mange. Ain't no telling what was going on with it, but oh, it was just the awfulest looking old thing ever was, Came right down there in the yard in front of him and lifted its leg up and went to licking itself, the way an old dog will do." Zachary looked over at Rube and said, "I wished I could do that." Rube said, "That dog would bite you." So I've got a little short, let me do this little short song that was the first one that Inez taught me, and I'd like to thank all of you for coming. Our hour is already up. It's 1 o'clock. So I will do this one and wish you a good week and a good rest of the year. And just everybody do the best you can. That's all anybody expects. And if they expect more than your friend, you need to ditch them. All right. So I was a purist, went down to Inez's, and she was going to learn me one of them old love songs she'd learned from her grandpa. And I'll bet you a nickel she did not learn this from her grandpa. There was an old farmer who lived by the sea, and a merry old farmer was he. Well, he had a fair maiden who laid on the grass, and every time she turned over she'd show her fair ruffles and tuffles, slick as a duck. And she taught that old farmer a new way to bring up the children, teach them to knit, while the servants in the barnyard was shoveling out contents of the barnyard as slick as glass. If you don't like my story, you can go kiss my daughter in the parlor who winds up the clock with a piece of a red ribbon tied all round her poodle dog galore. And if you don't like my story, I'll tell it no more. Thank y'all very much.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.